All right, get ready to unlock some serious athletic potential because today we're diving deep into strength training, specifically for track and field. If you're here, you're obviously passionate about this world, and we're about to give you the knowledge to really take things to the next level.
That's right. We're moving past those generic gym routines you see everywhere and getting laser focused on how targeted strength training can be a complete game changer for track and field athletes.
And to guide us, we're tapping into the expertise of Angus McEntyre. Now, this is a guy who not only understands how the body works as a chiropractor, but also knows what it takes to reach peak performance, being an Olympic coach himself.
He's put this presentation together, and it's just amazing how he emphasizes the unique demands the track and field places on the body. Different events use muscle groups in incredibly specific ways, so that cookie-cutter approach to strength training. Yeah, not going to cut it.
It'd be like trying to run a marathon in snowshoes. You absolutely need the right tools for the job. Before we even think about reps and sets, McIntyre wants us to understand the why behind athlete-specific training, and he does it with this concept he calls the matrix of success. Gotta admit, that caught my eye right away.
As it should. This isn't about how much you can bench. It's understanding that athletic success is, well, multifaceted, like a jigsaw puzzle. Recovery, technical skills, nutrition, psychology, and of course our focus today, strength training, they all fit together.
That interconnectedness is so key. It's not just building raw strength, but those highly specific qualities each event demands. Enhanced speed, explosive power, agility, endurance, the whole package. And McIntyre argues that if you neglect strength training, well, you're leaving a lot of potential untapped.
100%.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about preventing injuries. Proper strength training, it's like building a suit of armor for your body, making it resilient, less prone to those overuse injuries that sideline even the most dedicated athlete.
Building that solid foundation to withstand the incredible demands of these sports, so important. But it's impressive that McIntyre doesn't shy away from the potential downsides of doing it wrong, especially for young, developing athletes.
He's very upfront about that, particularly the risks of overtraining and burnout. Push too hard, too soon, and it can actually backfire, hindering their development long term. Imagine a young sprinter constantly doing heavy squats without enough rest. Could lead to imbalances, even stress fractures, ultimately hurting their performance. It's like forcing a flower to bloom before it's ready. You could end up damaging the plant.
That really paints a clear picture. You can tell McIntyre's a big advocate for a measured, individualized approach, recognizing that each athlete is unique.
Absolutely. He emphasizes that before even thinking about a training program, you need a thorough musculoskeletal assessment. And this isn't some quick once-over handing someone weights to see what they've got.
Okay, so break it down for us. I'm an athlete walking into McIntyre's office for the first time. What's happening?
He's looking for any underlying postural issues, things like rounded shoulders, excessive forward lean, which we see a lot in athletes who are constantly doing those forward movements. He's checking flexibility, range of motion, particularly in the hips, ankles, those crucial areas. He wants to know about past injuries, even those that seem unrelated at first. It's all valuable information, giving him a picture of your body's strengths and weaknesses.
Like detective work, piecing together your history and physicality to make a truly personalized plan. Let's say a sprinter walks in. History of hamstring pulls, pretty common in their sport. How would that change things for McIntyre?
That history of hamstring pulls is a big red flag. He knows that tight or weak hamstrings, often paired with hip imbalances, make those kinds of injuries more likely. So he'd focus on exercises that strengthen the hamstrings eccentrically. That's the lengthening phase of a movement, often neglected, and definitely drills that improve hip mobility and glute activation.
Like reinforcing a weak link in the chain, making sure the body's strong and balanced to prevent those recurring issues, makes perfect sense. So we've assessed the athlete, we know their needs, their weaknesses. What's next in McIntyre's playbook?
Now he dives into periodization. This is where things get seriously strategic.
Periodization. Sounds a little intimidating, to be honest. Break it down for us.
It's really about planning your year around different training blocks. Each block has its own specific goals, its own emphasis. You wouldn't train for a marathon by sprinting all out every single day, right? You vary the intensity and volume throughout the year to get the best results.
Okay, that makes sense. So what might those training phases actually look like, and how do they differ?
You'll typically see an off-season phase, pre-season, pre-competition, and finally, competition phase. Each one has a different focus, and the intensity, the volume of training, all that changes accordingly. Let's take the back squat, for example. Pretty fundamental for track and field.
Great example. Let's say we've got a sprinter. How would their back squat routine change throughout these phases? I'm taking notes.
Okay, so during the off season, it's all about building that solid foundation. Focus is on overall strength, muscle mass, so our sprinter might do higher repetitions, say 8 to 12, with a weight that's challenging but allows for good form. This builds muscular endurance, prepares the body for the tougher training to come.
Laying the groundwork. You can't rush the process. What about as preseason kicks in?
Now we shift towards power and explosiveness essential for a quick start. They might lower the reps, maybe 4 to 6, but increase the weight, really focusing on generating as much force as possible with each rep. This is where those strength gains from off-season translate into explosive power on the track.
So it's becoming more specific to sprinting as the season gets closer. What changes as they enter pre-competition?
Now the emphasis is on peaking at the right time. Volume might decrease a bit to prioritize recovery, but intensity stays high. They might incorporate plyometrics, things like box jumps, squat jumps, to develop that reactive explosive power for a powerful start.
Like fine-tuning an engine, making sure everything's firing perfectly on race day. And then competition phase is all about maintaining that peak.
You got it. Now, throughout all this, McEntyre talks about progressive overload and tissue adaptation. Our bodies are amazingly adaptable. They respond to these training stimuli by getting stronger, more efficient.
That makes sense. But I think that's where a lot of us, athletes included, go wrong.
Yeah.
We push too hard too soon, don't give our bodies enough time to actually recover and adapt. I know I've been guilty of that.
It's so common. McEntyre's big on incorporating deloading, or tapering, into the plan, especially approaching competition. Listening to your body, recognizing when it needs a break.
So deloading isn't weakness, it's a strategic move. Preventing burnout, making sure you're primed for peak performance when it matters most.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like taking your foot off the gas pedal a bit so the engine can cool down before you hit the accelerator again.
This is all making so much sense. The why, the assessment, periodization. But I'm ready to hear about the actual exercises. McEntyre's got a system for that too, right?
He does, calls it Lawler's Magnificent Seven. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll see why they're called magnificent. Peter Lawler, Australian strength and conditioning coach, he designed these 7 exercises specifically because they line up so well with the actual movements, with what athletes need in track and field. Building strength and power that directly translates to better performance.
Now you're speaking my language. Let's break down a few of these Magnificent 7, starting with, gotta start somewhere, the bench press. Why is this so important in track and field, and which events benefit most?
Bench press is huge for upper body strength and power. That's essential for events like shot put, hammer throw. Those athletes need to generate incredible force. Think about it, the bench press directly targets the chest, shoulders, triceps, all major players in those explosive movements.
It's like they're bench pressing that shot put itself. What about back squats? I feel like those are a staple in any athlete's routine.
You're right, and we touched on them a bit earlier, but back squats, it's like the king of compound exercises, engaging multiple muscle groups at once. Quads, glutes, hamstrings, even your core. Whether you need explosive power out of the blocks as a sprinter or that upward drive as a high jumper, strong legs are non-negotiable. And back squats, they deliver.
But even beyond that, it's about overall stability, balance. That's crucial in almost every track and field discipline.
Full body workout disguised as a leg exercise. Okay, let's get a little more technical. The split snatch and the clean. Gotta be honest, those always seemed a bit intimidating, especially for someone who, well, hasn't spent much time with Olympic lifting. I get it, they do look intimidating, but incredibly effective. Especially for something like javelin. That explosive power, that full body coordination, it's all there. Picture the javelin throw power from the ground up, transferring through the core and then out through the arm. The split snatch and the clean, they work that same chain.
So it's like practicing the javelin throw, but with a barbell.
Exactly. Same hip extension, core stability, overhead strength, all crucial for a good throw. And it's not just for javelin throwers either. These movements, they translate to benefits across a lot of track and field disciplines.
It's all clicking now, how you tailor these Magnificent 7 to the actual events, to the skill level. How would a coach modify, let's say, that back squat for a sprinter versus a long jumper?
Great question. Both athletes benefit, but the tweaks might differ. For a sprinter, maybe a wider stance, faster movement, really mimicking that drive phase of their sprint, getting that rapid force production off the blocks.
Targeting those fast twitch fibers.
You got it. Now, a long jumper might go slightly narrower stance, controlled descent, really emphasizing the depth of that squat so they can generate more power from a lower position, which is key for how far they jump. like that deep crouch before they launch themselves.
So even small changes can make a big difference. I get why McEntyre is such a fan of that individual approach, but it's not just tweaking the exercises, right? He's big on progression, too, gradually increasing the demand.
Huge advocate for that, and that's where understanding progressive overload comes in. Let's say a brand new shot putter, just starting with strength training. You're not throwing a heavy barbell at them right away. Start simple, maybe medicine ball throws, develop those movement patterns, build a base, then gradually increase the weight.
Like learning the alphabet before you write a novel? Master those basics?
Exactly. As they get stronger, you bump up the weight or even make the exercise more challenging. So they've mastered the basic squat. Now we try front squats, overhead squats, hitting those muscles in new ways. Always challenging, but not overwhelming.
This is incredible. Strength training is about so much more than just lifting heavy. It's that precision, the technique, understanding how each movement feeds into their performance. And McEntyre really emphasizes that mental game too, doesn't he?
He does. He talks about how strength training, done right, it builds confidence, resilience. And that's huge when you're under pressure. Think about it. You're pushing your limits in the gym, seeing that progress, lifting heavier, moving faster, recovering quicker. That builds a sense of accomplishment.
That feeling like, if I can conquer this workout, I can conquer anything.
Exactly. That confidence, it makes a difference when you're on that track, facing your competitors, knowing you put in the work. It's invaluable.
Absolutely. But even with all this talk about pushing limits, McEntyre's big on prioritizing recovery, too.
Huge advocate. He's clear that rest isn't some luxury, it's fundamental to the training, just as important as the workouts themselves.
I've been guilty of this. Thought skipping rest would get me ahead. Now I realize probably did more harm than good.
It's a common trap. But McEntyre reminds us, muscles don't grow while you're working them out. They grow when you're resting, recovering afterwards. That's when the real magic happens.
So skipping rest is like skipping the most important part.
You got it. Inadequate recovery leads to overtraining, burnout, injuries, all the things we're trying to avoid. It's like building a house without letting the concrete dry. It's just going to crumble.
So what does proper recovery even look like for someone in track and field? Sleep, nutrition, we hear that a lot. But McEntyre mentions active recovery, too. What's that all about?
Active recovery is all about light activity, promoting blood flow, getting rid of that lactic acid that builds up, instead of just crashing on the couch, which, hey, we all deserve. Sometimes think light movement.
Give us some examples. What might that look like?
Lots of options. A light jog, just conversational pace, some gentle yoga, Pilates, improving flexibility, even the pool. Long, smooth strokes can be great for active recovery. The point is, you're moving, but way lower intensity than a regular workout.
Listening to your body, giving it what it needs, but knowing that sometimes moving gently is the best way to recover. It's a balancing act.
Absolutely. And that balance is going to be different for everyone, depending on how much they're training, how their body responds. It's about paying attention, finding what works best for you.
This has been a masterclass on strength training for track and field. We're going so deep here, not just what exercises to do, but the why, the how, the when, debunking some myths along the way. It's incredible how much science goes into building a stronger, faster, more resilient athlete.
It's about that big picture thinking and how a smart approach, a personalized approach, can make all the difference.
Totally. But all this talk of periodization, progressive overload, tailored programs, it can feel like a lot, especially if you're new to it. So for those listening who are feeling a little, well, overloaded, what's one key takeaway you'd want them to remember?
It really comes back to that matrix of success that McEntyre talks about. Understanding that it's not just one thing that makes an athlete great. It's about how all the pieces work together,
So just hitting the gym and lifting heavy things randomly isn't going to cut it. You need that big picture view, nutrition, recovery, even the mental side of things.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Yeah.
And that's where having a good coach, a mentor, someone who's been there can make such a difference. They can help create a plan, answer questions, be that support system.
Like having a guide on this journey, someone to help you avoid those common mistakes.
Right. And never underestimate the importance of always learning. This field, sports science, it's always changing. Stay curious, ask those questions, always be open to refining what you know, getting better.
There's always something new to discover. I love that McEntyre, he ends his presentation with, stay in your lane, but never stop learning. Focus on your thing, but always be open to new ideas.
I love that. It reminds me of how everything's connected, You could learn so much from other fields. I mean, who knew a chiropractor would have so much insight on strength training for track and field? But it's about finding those links, using that knowledge to get better.
So true. This has been an amazing journey, exploring the world of strength training for track and field. We went beyond just the basics, really got into the why, the how, even debunked some common myths. And it's clear there's a real science to building a stronger, faster, more resilient athlete.
It's been great breaking it all down with you. You can really feel your passion for this.
And to everyone listening, we hope you've learned something valuable today, something you can apply whether you're a seasoned athlete, a coach, or just a fan of track and field. Remember, strength training, it's not just about bigger muscles, it's about reaching your full potential.
And as we wrap up, we want to leave you with a question. McIntyre got us thinking, how can you take these principles, even if you're not at the Olympics, and make them work for you? How do you personalize your training, choose the right exercises, and structure everything to achieve your goals?
It's something to think about. Keep exploring, try new things, and find what works best for you. This journey, unlocking your athletic potential, it never really ends. Keep pushing those limits, and we'll be here cheering you on every step of the way.